What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile video, and this time it is going to be an updated Mermail Atlantean deck list for the August 29th, 2016 Yu-Gi-Oh! Format. The newest Forbidden Limited list that Konami has put out at the time of me making this video has definitely given this deck a lot of new wiggle room in the format. Previously, the previous format that we had for this deck was very hostile towards Neptibus. You almost never actually got to resolve Neptibus' effect because there were things like Aether Stormforth lurking in the format, Kieran could just bounce Neptibus, and then you had things like Beatrice sending Farfa to banish Neptibus. Like, resolving Neptibus was really, really hard in the previous format, and that was basically what caused this deck to have very limited success. Now, a lot of those threats have been, kind of mitigated down a bit in the form of, a lot of cards have been hit and things have been put to 1 and stuff like that. But ultimately those threats do still exist, but they're just not in as big a quantity. Now, I don't think this deck is going to be anywhere near best deck status. I don't even think it'll probably be top 3. But it is a very strong deck, and it's a very possibly good contender for the format if you are trying to build something that you want to play with. It's got the added benefit of if you build it to go second, like this video has it built, then you basically win every die roll because your opponent, unless they're playing Blue Eyes and decide to blind second, which I honestly don't think is correct with that deck, but that's a whole another topic for a whole different video. Most of the time, you're going to lose the dice roll and your opponent will still choose to go first. If you win the die roll, you're going to choose to go second. So you basically get the added benefit of winning almost every single die roll that you play. But anyway, this deck is my preemptive take on trying to play it for this format. And ultimately, just tell me what you guys think in the comments down below. But anyway, just jumping straight into it. Obviously 3 Neptibus because it's basically standard. 1 Deep Sea Diva. I wish this card was at multiples. I definitely wish that we had multiple Divas to play instead of playing like Undyne Controller. But you basically, in my opinion, have to play these cards. 1, because this is searchable through some other cards that I play, thus allowing you to have hands where you don't open Neptibus or Diva or Dragoons in a discard outlet into being able to, just have Undyne as another card you can summon. Getting Controller is just extra cards, so there is that as well, and it's ultimately just like the 4th Neptibus, technically the 6th if you count Diva and 1-for-1, all that sort of nonsense. And like I said, Controller is typically just a card you can use to discard for later. But for the Atlanteans, 2 copies of Dragoons, 2 copies of Marksman, and then 2 copies of Heavy Infantry. Ultimately playing the full, just 2 and 2 and 2 ratio, the 6 copy ratio. Basically, Marksman has a lot more value now, simply because of Card of Demise decks being rather popular. Even though they're not very good, they are popular, and being able to hit cards in the back row is actually very valuable now, more than it was in the past, because of the fact that, you're able to do that. And then Heavy Infantry has always just been decent in this format, and the previous format, because a lot of stuff stays face up now. And as well as it being able to give you double summon abilities and do some really cheeky plays with Neptibus summoning it back from grave. Is definitely a very, very good reason as to why it's here. But 2-2-2 is just the ratio I've been liking from my playtesting with this deck over the past literally day. I've just been zerging a lot of testing with this deck in like DEVpro and such. But for the bigger monsters, the obvious Mooling Glace, take 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, free special summon, OTK engine, stuff like that. It's pretty self-exclamatory. For the Mermails, I've been liking only 2 Abyss Megalo. I don't like how it clumps at 3. You can really access this card in multiples on turns that you're going to be killing your opponent anyway, so accessing the card isn't really an issue. So I just don't see a need for like 3 of this card. I've played 3 in the past, and I've just never been an overly huge fan of it because it clumps in multiples. And ultimately, like, if you don't have a Neptibus play, then or like a Teus play, like discarding Dragoons or something else that was like really valuable. Like if you have multiple Megalos, like there's no point in actually playing that game. Like you'd rather get to the starters before you get to Megalos. So 2 is enough to kill your opponent through basically almost anything. But other than that, like there's really no need for the 3rd in my opinion, because you have just better discard outlets. Speaking of Mermail Abyss Teus, this card's actually just amazing. I think it's one of the biggest reasons to play this deck. Like it's a low risk, high reward like investment. Just being able to discard Dragoons, Marksmen, or Heavy Infantry, and then get searches as well is just always really good. It's just like the best discard outlet. Like you don't just want to start your turn with a Megalo drop, especially with things like Strike running around in the format. You'd rather just play something like Teus, especially since it just gives you another body for free. So there is that. For the Teus targets, I'm playing 2 Abyss Pike and I'm playing 2 Abyss Gund. I was playing around with 1 Pike, 1 Turge, but like I said, Undyne is searchable off this, and there's multiple hands that you can open where you have like Teus plus 1 of these and a water, and like just other ways to just search Undyne. The main way is basically just like having Pike, Gund, a water, and Megalo, because then you discard them for Megalo, and then you summon this back off of the Gund, and then you discard the water, search Undyne, and then Undyne sends Dragoons because you haven't used your normal summon yet. Just little plays like that, nice little interactions that you get. And as well as that, being able to have a 4 that's searchable in the deck, as readily searchable as this card is, as well as being, revivable off Gund, and then having Dragoons be revivable off Neptibus, is a very big asset for you, because it allows you to make rank 4s outside of Instant Fusion, which is actually necessary in some cases, specifically like if you need out something like Dark Planet where you can't use Instant Fusion, or if you need to make like Emerald to put back Norden so you can Instant Fusion it. Like, those are plays that you want to be able to do. But that's it for the water monsters. Actually, there's 22 of them, and then the last 4 monsters in the deck are just hand traps of 2 Valor and 2 Max C. There's no Kaijus in this list. I don't feel them to be overly necessary currently, until the format actually like really defines itself. If Blue Eyes becomes a really big threat, then Kaijus might become a main deck staple for this deck. But even then, like, there are cards in here that mitigate that matchup as well. The only thing that would really kind of put Kaijus back into the deck is whether or not like that Herald deck really increases in popularity and takes off. Because basically Kaijus are like the most clear-cut out to Herald of Perfection that there is in the game. As well as like it would just be a, Gamsteel is just always a water that you can discard, so there's that. But anyway, that's 26 monsters total. There's 14 spells in the deck. The Abyss Scale that you search off Megalo. I'm personally playing Cetus because of the increased popularity of Burning Abyss Phantom Knight due to the ban list. That deck was basically untouched for the most part, and this card can negate Fog Blades, which is actually really key. It'll negate a Fog Blade, and the Fog Blade will just sit there. It'll just negate it, and it won't affect the monster because it'll negate its activation. It never properly resolved, but it will just sit on the board. So if you're going for an OTK push, you can put this on Megalo, and like you can make your Dweller then. That way, the Fog Blade can't stop Dweller. Stuff like that. This just seems to be the most relevant one right now. 1-for-1 Soul Charge and triple Instant Fusion, just for like really powerful like combo extenders and stuff like that. Soul Charge is just like a really good card. Like at this point, the format has gone like tamed down enough to where you can actually just like use Soul Charge in this deck. Previously, I've been very against it because you just want to try and kill your opponent, but on the essence, you don't kill them. You're able to Soul Charge them, and you're actually able to put up big boards, and they actually stick nowadays because of the fact that like the interactions that are in the game now are actually very simplistic in the form of you're dealing more with Blue Eyes and Beatrice than you are with like multiple Dart Destroyers and like Stormer and Aether Stormforth. So there's that. And then this is just another copy of Neptibus, so like that should be self-explanatory. Or Valor if you just want to do some synchro plays and you already have access to Neptibus. But just some mass removal cards. Raigeki Double Dark Hole. Like I said, these could easily just become Kaijus in the future, depending on how the format defines itself, and if the Herald deck specifically takes off. But as it stands right now, these cards are really good, because you do want to be going second with this deck, like I've already said, and you're just able to clear boards with these cards. Like basically, this deck is a very unique beast, where like you can play a lot of different bricks and like non-combo cards, and that's fine because as long as you get to Neptibus plus water, that's game. Like you just have so many different cards you're allowed to play because you are playing a very extensive combo deck, but it's an extensive combo deck that can function really well on low amounts of cards. So you can play other cards like these in high quantities, and like they actually just don't really do anything for you if you draw a couple of them. The only way you're going to be breaking with this deck is if you don't draw or don't resolve Neptibus. But these cards allow you to like just clear threats and deal with that, like clearing pilots off of the board, clearing like Spirit Dragon if your opponent doesn't have a Return of the Dragon Lords engrave is very powerful. Just stuff like that. But keeping going with the theme of mass destruction and just wanting to play the game, triple Twin Twister. Being able to resolve like Undyne into Twin Twister is very cool, very key. But also just being able to, like I've said, you're able to play this deck with very few cards. Like it takes 2 to 3 cards to kill your opponent with this deck in any specific scenario, as long as you open Undyne, Neptibus, Diva, or 1-for-1. So as long as you open any of those cards, or some combination of cards that gets to them, like Teus Dragoons, you have a lot of different ways to kill your opponent. So you can actually use the other 3 to 4 cards that are in your hand to just be disruption and clear threats that would prevent you from killing them, to prevent your engine from performing. So that's what the triple Twin Twister is for, just to allow you to clear back row and kill them. Then the last cards in the deck are 1 Upstart Goblin to make it 39 cards consistency, and then the 40th card is literally just a card that I threw in. It's a salvage. I've been testing this card. I don't like it in multiples, but I do definitely like it as a one of, specifically against like Demise decks and stuff, because you're allowed to throw your cards into their back row and then utilize this to get you free cards back. So that's actually just really cool. Something I really like. I might test 2 of this. I was testing 3, then eventually I cut it down to 1. But I didn't do a lot of testing with it at 2. 2 might actually just be the number where I put it. It just depends on how the rest of the deck actually shapes up. I don't think this is a deck that can support Pot of Desires at all, by the way. So that's definitely why it's not in the list. Like, you don't want to banish your Dragoons. You don't want to banish really anything. because you have a lot of like really good one-ofs in this deck that you just use for like OTK enablers and stuff. And this deck already goes second, so you already have the natural plus of being on the draw anyway. But anyway, for the extra deck, it's just pretty simple. One Abyss Gyos, one Draco Sack, because you do just like use this a couple of times in sided games where like you side in Abyss lead, and then like you were able to do hand loops. There are still specific hand loops that require this card. So like it's just in here for that purpose. Like I said, Abyss lead is in the side deck for like games that you think your opponent's going to make you go first, or against like Blue Eyes where they're definitely going to make you go first, stuff like that. But Hopewoven, Spider Shark, Utopia the Lightning, and Utopia literally just to out like things like Beatrice and Dark Planet. There's no other out in the deck to Dark Planet other than this card if your opponent's playing it. So that's why like you have it. You have it so you can like make it with Dragoons and Pike, and just kill it. So there's that. But Castel just for spot removal, Emerald to shuffle back cards, one Dweller. I don't really have room for the second, and I was finding myself never really making the second. Every time I had the option to make the second Dweller, there was usually just a better option that I was able to utilize. For Synchros, Trishula, Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, Stardust Charge Warrior, Armory Arm for some nice little OTKs, and then the staple Tatsunoko. Stardust Charge Warrior is just better than Dulorn in my opinion because it allows you to draw a card. Trishula self-exclamatory. This card is really just something you only summon in sided games, but some games if you think your opponent's maining Gores or Trag or anything like that, you're able to make this, especially like on turns where you're not able to make Dweller. That's actually something that does come up. You can make this and then kill things like Beatrice and Cosmo Floaters with ease. So like there's that. So you do sometimes make it game 1, but most of the time you can make it game 2 or 3 if you think your opponent's sided in things like Gores or Trag or stuff like that. Or Speedrun Menko, Battle Fader, anything like that that's just going to stop you from killing them. But then the last 2 cards in the extra deck are just 2 copies of cards for Instant Fusion. Norden and a Mavelus. Mavelus just because it's a level 4 Instant Fusion target. That way you're able to, support 3 Instant Fusions in the main deck, but obviously Norden is definitely the meat of what you're going to be doing all your Instant Fusion plays with. And overall, that's basically just it. There's not really a lot that can be said about this deck that hasn't already been said. I think this deck, again, is a very good, rogue option for the new format, but I definitely don't think it's anywhere near close to being best deck. You have a couple different options for this deck building it. You could build it, in a similar way that you see that I've done, where you built it to, specifically to go second. Or, the benefit in that is that, like I said, you basically almost win every die roll, because you almost always get what you want anyway. But the other option you have to play this deck is that you can just put the Brilliant Fusion package in it and build the deck to go first and hand loop your opponent with, just being able to make Ciphering Lord Omega, being able to do Herald of the Arclight plus Moving Glaze plays. Basically allow your opponent to start with 3 to 2 cards. Based off how you open and stuff, and it has a lot of very simple interactions, and that is something that I do like. But overall, I don't know what the better option is for the format going forward. But anyway, that's my current preliminary Mermail deck for the format. That's definitely what I'm just been doing the most testing with, and I actually just come to this result in the form of just I feel like this deck is really good. If you were going to a regional level event, you could definitely do some things with it. But if you were going to go to a YCS level event, I wouldn't really recommend this deck. But other than that, that's basically it for this video. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. Links are in the description to my Facebook, background music playlist, and Twitch links. If you want to check any of those out, that's what they're there for. Let me know what you guys think about the Mermail deck and this build in general in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions you'd like to make, definitely leave them in the comments. If they're pretty decent, then I might try them out, maybe test them for myself, and then we'll see where that goes from there. But other than that, that's it for this video. As I've already said, thanks for watching, and as always, guys, take care.